Hey YouTube, welcome to Sunkern's Lab. Today we're going to be starting a new series on my channel. This series is going to be me analyzing Pokemon in a competitive fashion to help people either pick sets for themselves or just basically understand how and why Pokemon is used the way it is. So that's pretty much the point of this series. Now, before I actually dive into this series, there's a few things you need to know. This is sort of a disclaimer. Number one, if you're going to be watching this video, you might want to have a basic idea of the metagame, and this is of course a competitive analysis. You can use this in your playthroughs if you choose to, but this is mainly geared towards competitive Pokemon. So if you're not looking for competitive Pokemon advice, you might not want to technically get into this too much because it might just be over complicated for you. But if you are looking for competitive advice and competitive analyses, you might want to have a basic idea of the tiers, of the metagame, especially of the tiers and the moves and things like that, because I'm not going to go into full depth because it would simply make these videos far too long, and I'm sure they'll already be far too long considering that I talk way too much. I've already had to re-record this 3 times because each time it's gone over 20 minutes, and that's way too long for an analysis video. So that's pretty much it. So basically what I'm saying is have a basic idea of the metagame before you dive into these videos. You don't have to be an expert, just have a basic idea of what's going on before you dive into these, because I'm not going to be able to explain everything as we go. So the first Pokemon that we're going to be analyzing in this series is Abomasnow. Now, the reason why I choose Abomasnow first is for one reason and one reason only, because I'm doing this in alphabetical order. I don't really like Abomasnow that much, and he's not really the best Pokemon, so I don't really have any preference to him. It's simply, like I said, because this is it is an alphabetical order. So, with that said, however, I don't necessarily hate Abomasnow, and I definitely do prefer him over certain other weather inducers, and I'll explain why as we go on. So, the first thing that we should dive into about Abomasnow is its typing. Abomasnow is a Grass-Ice typing, and it's the only Pokemon, other than its pre-evolution Snover, that has the typing of Grass-Ice. However, that alone doesn't really make Abomasnow's typing that great, and the reason why is because he actually has 7 weaknesses because of its ability, because of his typing, and his typing, that many weaknesses actually ties him for the most weaknesses of any Pokemon, with Celebi and Exeggutor, which also both have 7 weaknesses. However, there is a silver lining to this situation. Abomasnow does have 4 great resistances, which it can definitely play to if it wants to be successful, and those resistances are ground, water, grass, and electric. So if you want to use Abomasnow, you definitely want to keep in mind that it does have some great resistances as well as some terrible weaknesses. So you definitely have to play him carefully and intelligently if you want him to survive and be useful to you. So beyond Abomasnow's typing, we have his ability, and his ability is one of the only things that really sets Abomasnow apart from other grass types or other ice types in general. And the reason why is because he has the ability Snow Warning. And as you probably already know, Snow Warning summons a permanent hailstorm to the field of play, and it will not go away until your opponent either switches the weather or the match ends. So, Snow Warning is a great ability, and being as he's the only fully evolved Pokemon to be able to summon a permanent hailstorm, Abomasnow definitely has an important niche in the metagame. Abomasnow's second ability is Soundproof, and while that's not quite a bad ability, it does give him immunity to things like Roar, Perish Song, Echoed Voice, Bug Buzz, etc. It's definitely not as important as Snow Warning, simply because Snow Warning is the reason why Abomasnow is in OU. It's the reason why Abomasnow is so commonly used as much as it is in the metagame. So you definitely probably won't want to use Soundproof. However, it's not necessarily a bad ability. It just simply is overshadowed by Snow Warning in almost every single situation. So now that we know Abomasnow's typing and abilities, we can get right into his stats. Now, Abomasnow's stats are not really that impressive, and from first glance you might just think that they're not useful at all. And unfortunately, his defense stat, his speed stat, and even his attacking stats are just simply mediocre. However, he does have a relatively decent base 90 HP stat, which can be, when invested properly, can definitely help out with taking hits. And his attack and special attack stats aren't that terrible, they're just simply not that great either. And that's pretty much how the story goes with most of Abomasnow's stats. He simply doesn't have the greatest stats all around, but they're not really that terrible either. However, the most important stats that he has, in my opinion, are his HP and his special defense, and we'll get into that when we talk about suggested sets for Abomasnow. Basically, he has some good special defense, and with his typing, he can definitely be useful in that sense. So real quick, let's go over some of the moves that Abomasnow has in his move pool. Abomasnow has some pretty decent attacking moves in his move pool, such as Wood Hammer, which is a base 120 physical attack, and Blizzard, which is a base 120 special attack. Grass and ice respectively. Blizzard becomes 100% accurate when it's in the hail as well, so definitely some decent moves for a Pokemon with half-decent offensive stats like Abomasnow. He also gets an offensive priority move in Ice Shard, which can be very, very useful. Obviously, you want to use that to its strength as much as possible, whenever possible, because priority can be a very useful move. Furthermore, Abomasnow also gets the obvious Ice Beam, but it gets great moves such as Earthquake, Focus Punch, and Brick Break as well, which can all be very useful in their own different ways, which we'll talk about when we discuss the suggested sets. But those are all definitely very good moves because things like Earthquake can take out Heatrans and even things like random Purifier types, maybe like a Chandelure or an Arcanine that you might find in OU. So you definitely could find it very useful to carry Earthquake on certain sets. And Focus Punch, of course, is a very good move overall, just simply for its high base power. And it couples very well with Substitute, which is actually one of the moves we'll be using in the suggested sets. So with that said, let's get right into the suggested sets. Now, there are quite a few sets that Abomasnow can run because it does have quite a diverse offensive move pool. You can either go physically offensive, specially offensive, or you can even go defensively. But the first set that I'm going to discuss is actually a mixed offensive set. Now, this is a set that is commonly used. It's the set that is preferred on Smogon's websites. However, it's not the set that I prefer, and I will get into my own personal suggestion after this set, but this set does actually work very, very well, and it definitely should not be underestimated. So some of the EVs that you might want to run are either max special attack or max attack. It depends more or less upon what side you want to be hitting hardest from. Usually you probably want to run max special attack and then split the rest of your EVs between attack and speed, depending really, like I said, upon what side of the spectrum you want to be hitting hardest from. However, with things like Ice Shard and Wood Hammer in your offensive arsenal, you might want to invest fully in physical attack and completely ignore special attack overall. Just really depends, like I said, upon you. However, this is going to be for a mixed set, so we're going to have to be splitting those EVs in two, and as you can see on the screen, basically we're going with max special attack and mixed stats between attack and speed. Now, as far as item goes, you probably want to have leftovers on this set, mainly because of Abomasnow's weakness to Stealth Rocks, and you don't really want to be switching on Stealth Rocks and taking a ton of damage and having no recovery. So definitely having a useful item like leftovers to get back some health could be very beneficial to you. Now, as far as the moves go, you really have two main sets. You can either go with a specially offensive set with Blizzard, Giga Drain, and then having supporting moves like Ice Shard and Hidden Power Fire. Hidden Power Fire mainly for things like Ferrothorn. Or you can run a physically offensive set with Wood Hammer, Ice Shard, and you can either run something like Hidden Power Fire or Blizzard, or you can run Earthquake and Focus Punch. And obviously, all of these moves are basically optional on all the sets. It really just depends on what you need and what options you need, what opponents you might need to take out in certain situations. And the same goes for your speed stats as well. You can definitely use some more or less speed depending on what you feel like you need for your specific team. However, these are the most commonly used moves and most commonly used EVs, so probably the best for you if it's your first time using Abomasnow, and maybe later on you can go back and tweak them depending on what you find you like better. Basically, you probably want to be using Blizzard, Giga Drain, and Ice Shard as your main attacks, and then having something like Hidden Power Fire or Earthquake as your supporting moves that you can use to take out specific threats such as Ferrothorn or Heatran. You can also use get rid of either Ice Shard or Blizzard for one of the aforementioned moves if you feel like you need it. So let's go on to the second suggested set, and this is a set that I personally use on my Abomasnows, and this is for one reason and one reason only. When I use Weather in OU, I need to keep my Weather starter alive, and that is the number one priority, in my opinion, for the Weather starter to stay alive. That's the number one thing they need to be doing, and that's why I actually run a completely specially defensive set on my Abomasnows. Now, there are quite a few EV spreads here. I'm not going to get into too much detail so I don't use too much time, but basically you can run max HP, max special defense, as you can see on the screen right now, so that you can just basically get the most specially defensive bulk that you possibly can out of Abomasnow's decent stats. Or you can run max HP and some speed investment. Now, I personally run enough speed to simply outspeed minimum speed Politoads, and I usually go a little bit further up to pass up some speed creeping Politoads and get myself to 180 speed. And everything else, after getting max HP, that speed investment, everything else goes into special defense. The reason why I do that is simply because I like to be able to set up a substitute on defensive Politoads and easily Leech Seed or Giga Drain them on the next turn, depending on whether or not I predict them to switch out. So that's pretty much the speed investment for the middle tier speed. However, you can run more speed on even a specially defensive set, because you can run enough speed to outspeed minimum speed Heatrans. I feel like I just said the word speed like 18 times, sorry, but you can run enough investment to outspeed minimum speed Heatrans and kill it with an Earthquake if you should choose to run Earthquake on this set, and that also goes for the previous set as well, and of course that EV spread will be on the screen as well. Now, as far as the item goes, you definitely want to have leftovers. It's kind of non-negotiable. There's no other useful item. And as far as moves go, you really want to be working with a sub-seeding set here, because without Leech Seed, Abomasnow has no way of recovering, and therefore becomes relatively easy to kill and easy to wear down, especially considering it's weak to Stealth Rock. So you definitely want to be using Substitute and Leech Seed. Now, as far as the last two moves are concerned, it's really up to you. Some people like to run a plain-out Ice Beam Hidden Power Fire set. However, I personally like to run Giga Drain and Blizzard simply because it has decent coverage and it allows me to fire off some relatively powerful attacks at my opponent. Some other options, as we've already discussed multiple times, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but you can run Earthquake, Focus Punch, and really you would want to run Earthquake if you run the max speed investment, because you would obviously want that to outspeed and kill Heatrans. So definitely take into consideration what kind of speed investment you're using, and obviously pair that up with the moves that you're using. So that's pretty much it. Before I actually end this video, though, I'm going to show you a quick clip of me using a specially defensive Abomasnow, and on that note, I'm going to let you guys enjoy that, and thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and feel free to subscribe to see more of my analysis in the future. And yeah, once again, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.